Good morning. We would like to welcome all of you to our virtual press conference today to discuss the FDA's authorization of the Moderna COVID-19 vaccine and the Pfizer Bioentec COVID-19 vaccine for children down to 6 months of age. First, we will hear from FDA Commissioner Dr. Robert M. Califf, and then from Dr. Peter Marks, the Director of the FDA Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research. Following their remarks, we will allow time for questions from the media. With that, let's turn over the press conference to Dr. Califf.
Good morning, and thanks you all for joining. Today, the FDA authorized the emergency use of the Moderna COVID-19 vaccine and the Pfizer Bioentec COVID-19 vaccine for children down to 6 months of age. We know that many parents, caregivers, and clinicians have been anxiously awaiting today's authorizations. We're acutely aware of the importance of having vaccines available for our youngest children. And as we've seen with the older age groups, we expect that the vaccines for younger children will provide protection from the most severe outcomes of COVID-19, such as hospitalization and death. Today's actions are twofold. First, we authorized the Moderna COVID-19 vaccine to include use of the vaccine in individuals 6 months through 17 years of age. Prior to today, this vaccine has been authorized for use in adults 18 years of age and older. We also authorized the Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine to include use of the vaccine in children 6 months through 4 years of age. This vaccine has previously been authorized for use in individuals 5 years of age and older. Our evaluation of the safety and effectiveness data for both of these EUAs followed our standard rigorous review process and included input from our independent advisory committee, who voted in support of the authorizations. Parents and caregivers can have confidence that these vaccines have been thoroughly evaluated and meet the FDA's standards for safety and effectiveness. These authorizations will be further discussed by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. I'll give you a brief overview of our actions today, and then Dr. Marks will speak about the data before we open up the line for questions. First, an FDA's analysis of both Moderna's submissions for all age groups from 6 months through 17 years of age, and Pfizer's submission for children 6 months through 4 years of age. The known and potential risks of the vaccines were found to outweigh the known and potential risks for all pediatric, known and potential benefits were found to outweigh the known and potential risks for all the pediatric populations. For both vaccines, immune responses of participants in all age groups were compared to the immune responses of adults in previous studies that determined the vaccines to be effective in preventing COVID-19. With today's authorizations, the public has options for COVID-19 vaccines for their children. Both the Moderna and Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccines are now available for the youngest children, and parents now have another option for their kids 6 years of age and older for vaccination that meets FDA's rigorous standards. We understand that whenever a public health decision is made that involves children, there are strong opinions on both sides. But it's important to note that while COVID-19 does affect older and immunocompromised populations more adversely than young children can still suffer the severe consequences of COVID-19, including severe illness and death. Notably, since the surge of the Omicron variant, children 0 to 4 years of age have been hospitalized at a rate approximately 5 times higher than the previous peak experienced during Delta variant predominance. Furthermore, although the number of deaths in children is small by adult standards, any death of a child is tragic and should be prevented if possible. And COVID-19 is one of the leading causes of death in children. Statistics like these are unnerving. By vaccinating our youngest children, we hope to prevent the most devastating consequences of COVID, by extension, providing benefits to their families and communities. Thank you, and I now will turn to Dr. Marks to discuss more about the FDA's process for authorizing the vaccine.
Thank you, Dr. Califf. It's a pleasure to join you all today. We recognize there may be questions about how FDA came to its decision that the vaccines are safe and effective for use in our nation's youngest children. Dr. Califf touched on the key points of FDA's evaluation of data for these EUAs, but I'd like to address some of the specifics of the safety and effectiveness data today to be as transparent as possible for parents and caregivers. I'd like to first address FDA's decisions on Moderna's submissions for emergency use authorization for multiple pediatric age groups. For each age group, FDA reviewed effectiveness data based on randomized, placebo-controlled studies in which the immune response of children in each age group authorized today was compared to the immune response of adults aged 18 through 25 years of age in a previous similar study, which determined the vaccine to be effective in preventing COVID-19. Children in each age group received a 2-dose series of the vaccine with an age-appropriate dose of mRNA or placebo. In FDA's analysis for each age group, the immune response to the vaccine was comparable to the immune response of the adults. With regards to the safety evaluation, for all age groups, the majority of recipients had at least 2 months of follow-up after the second dose. Next, I'd like to talk about the Pfizer Bioentec COVID-19 vaccine. The effectiveness data to support the emergency use authorization in children 6 months through 4 years of age is based on a comparison of immune responses in 2 age subgroups, 6 through 23 months and 2 through 4 years of age. Following 3 doses of the Pfizer Bioentec COVID-19 vaccine in a subset of children in this age group to the immune responses among adults 16 through 25 years of age who received 2 higher doses of the Pfizer Bioentec COVID-19 vaccine in a previous study which determined the vaccine to be effective in preventing COVID-19. In FDA's analyses, the immune response to the vaccine in both age groups of children was comparable to the immune response of the older participants. For safety, study participants were followed for at least 2 months after receiving the 3rd vaccine dose. We at FDA understand the gravity of making decisions that affect the lives of children, and we are acutely aware of the trust bestowed upon us by the American people. Parents, caregivers, and healthcare providers can trust that both of these vaccines have been authorized with science and safety at the forefront of our minds. Vaccines are one of the most important and impactful public health measures in human history, and the FDA-approved and authorized vaccines have been proven to prevent the most severe consequences of COVID-19. Today's authorizations allow for our youngest population to be vaccinated. I urge individuals of all ages to get vaccinated and boosted when eligible if you've not done so already. I'd now like to turn the press conference back over to the moderator.
Thank you, Dr. Califf and Dr. Marks. We'll now move to the question and answer portion of the call. As a reminder, if you have a question, please raise your hand via the participant panel. When you are selected, please unmute your mic and turn on your camera. Our first question comes from Michael Ehrman at Reuters. Michael, could you please unmute your mic?
Apologies. Wondering how many kids you expect to get vaccinated in this age group, given the 30% rate in 5 to 11-year-olds, and whether there's anything that the FDA plans to do in terms of outreach to improve vaccination rates in the youngest kids.
Yeah, that's a really important question. I'll just make a comment, and I know Peter, who's been working on this for quite a while, will have some thoughts. I mean, the first point I'd make is that the vaccination rates are too low, and we know it's a problem, and we do need to work on it. I'd also emphasize that this is a joint responsibility, particularly the CDC, which will have its advisory committee meeting over the weekend, will be responsible for the final recommendation for implementation. And there's a pretty extensive strategy involving all the government to try to distribute the vaccine and also make sure people are well informed. But that's not enough. I think we already know that. Peter, I'm very interested actually in your thoughts about this.
Thanks, Dr. Califf. So we will continue to provide accurate information for the public on our websites and in brief video format to help people understand the benefits and risks so they can make informed choices. We'll work with our government partners here. We do have a commitment to trying to help get the vaccination rates up in this country throughout the age ranges so that they are in other Western nations where we see vaccination rates in adults in some other Western countries at above 90% fully vaccinated. And we'd like to try to get there. This is a real issue, and it is a drain on our healthcare system when we don't have the population adequately vaccinated. And it's also sad for the preventable illness that occurs.
Yeah, just one quick reinforcement on that, because it was part of the Senate hearing yesterday, as some of you may have seen it. It's a real tragedy when you have something that's free and with so few side effects that prevents death and hospitalization. Each of those events, although the numbers, as we've stressed, are not large in children, I mean, children shouldn't have these outcomes. It's just an unnecessary tragic event that could have been prevented. And so we've got to redouble our efforts.
Thank you. Our next question is from Cheyenne Hazlitt at ABC. Please unmute your mic and turn your camera on.
Hi. My question is for you guys as parents, grandparents. If you were deciding between these two shots for your own children, what factors would you weigh between Pfizer and Moderna? There was a lot of talk about that at the VRPAC meeting.
Well, I'm a grandparent, and I got two that are in the age category we're discussing. They'll get the first one that's available. I think there are nuances here that Peter is very well prepared to discuss, but the differences between the two are so much less than the fundamental benefit to risk balance that I think it is nuance based. We know in America people still want to have a choice, and they have one. So Peter, maybe you can fill in from there.
Yeah, I think to a first approximation, I would say parents should feel comfortable getting either one of these vaccines to their children. I think they each have their own nuanced benefits and risks compared to each other. I think for as we heard, it may be that the Moderna vaccine brings an immune response slightly more rapidly. On the other hand, the 3-dose Pfizer regimen may also bring a greater immune response after the third dose. And there are some subtle differences in the safety profile. But again, these are relatively subtle. And unless you really want to dive into the subtlety, to a first approximation, the correct answer here is whatever vaccine your healthcare provider, pediatrician has, that's what I would give my child. If I was going to go out right now to the nearest pharmacy, it would be I would let my child, if they were that age, get whatever vaccine was available. Just as when I have older children, whichever vaccine was available, the pharmacy I had them get that vaccine.
Our next question is from Lori McGinley at the Washington Post. Please turn on your camera and unmute your mic.
Lori, are you out there? We can't see you or hear you.
We can come back to Lori. Our next question is from Alex Tin of CBS. Please turn on your camera and unmute your mic.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks for taking my question. Can you tell us how parents should think about the possibility of a strain change for the fall? I mean, if they wait a few months, is there any possibility their primary series is going to be a different shot? Thanks so much.
Oh, wow. That's an advanced question. That is a good one. Peter, I'll let you take that on since you have the advisory committee coming up on this topic.
Yeah, no, thanks very much, Dr. Kaliff. So on June 28th, there will be an advisory committee on discussing potential strain changes for the COVID-19 vaccines. But I would strongly recommend that with the availability of this primary series, which provides excellent foundational immunity against a broad range of COVID-19 variants, that I would have children start this right now. And if it turns out that there is a very major change in strains that needs to occur in the fall, we will adjust for that and make sure that there is an option available for the youngest children and throughout the pediatric age range as appropriate. But for right now, this is something where we would recommend that people start this now because it will provide that foundational level of immunity. And it's important to note that although there is a lot of information circulating that, well, I had the Omicron variant or my child had the Omicron variant and vaccination is not important, there are emerging data to suggest that the Omicron variant does not produce the kind of excellent immune response against a wide range of COVID-19 variants that the vaccinations do.
Our next question is from Catherine Foley of Politico. Please turn on your camera and unmute your mic.
Hello, thank you for taking my question. I'm wondering if you all can comment on the delay in authorizing the Moderna COVID vaccine after the company finished submitting their application in April, I believe, of this year. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I'll let Peter take that one. It was a topic that obviously we were concerned about and focused on.
Yeah, so I wouldn't call this a delay. We had a lot of material to work through for the Moderna submission that needed to be analyzed. There was an entire submission from 6 months through 17 years of age. It was very important to get that correct, and we did so. It so happens that towards the end, we converged with the updated submission from Pfizer, which had an open emergency use authorization request that was completed. And we believe that actually bringing these together to the American public, and we did not delay to do so, actually gives people choice and gives those who want to get into the nuance options. So I think at the end, this is a very good outcome with now having 2 vaccines for the entire age range, 6 months and up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Evan Brown at Fox News. Please unmute your mic and turn on your camera.
Hi, good morning. Hopefully this thing's working here. It's a question just for the two of you or whoever would like to answer. The CDC's expert review panel is not scheduled till tomorrow. Why go ahead with the authorization if CDC hasn't taken its customary role here in giving their opinions on things? Do you expect to get a thumbs up from them, or is it just is their input not needed here, or what's the logic behind that, please?
I mean, Peter, you've been doing this for 2 years. I'm a newbie and I've been in the job for 4 months now, but my understanding is this is the normal sequence. The FDA makes its decision, and the CDC has a responsibility for deciding about implementation. So the sequence is right. But Peter, you can correct me if I'm misstating.
No, you're exactly correct. In fact, the CDC is meeting right now to discuss this. The normal sequence of events is that FDA authorizes, as we've done here. This is actually mirroring the process that would happen when we're in non-emergency times, when FDA first licenses a vaccine. Then CDC considers the data to make a recommendation for what individuals that vaccine would be most appropriate. So we followed the exact same procedure we've done since the beginning of the pandemic. They will consider this, and we expect them to take votes. I believe they're expected to take these votes, as you've noted, tomorrow morning. This is just the process, and hopefully by early next week, if everything goes according to the way we might expect it to, and if CDC does support the use of the vaccines, this will be available for distribution.
Yeah, and of course, as Peter alluded to, we're not telling the CDC what to do. They have an independent advisory committee and independent decision-making authority. But I will note it was a unanimous vote by the FDA advisory committee. So it'd be surprising if they came to a different conclusion at CDC. But they're discussing it now.
Our next question comes from Jamie Smith of Financial Times.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, so the rise of the BA4 and BA5 subvariants, they're driving a new wave of infections in Europe and the US, and there appears to be an element of immune escape, which could even limit the effectiveness of the new Omicron-based vaccines, which are under development. In light of this, with the panel upcoming on June 28th, would you encourage vaccine makers to rapidly develop a new vaccine to target specifically these two strains? And is there actually time to get this up and running by the fall, perhaps by streamlining the EUA process? Thanks.
You've been doing too much homework. That's too advanced a question, but I will turn it over to Peter, because you can imagine the preparation that's going into the upcoming advisory committee.
Thank you for that very thoughtful question. And you're exactly right. What has been noted over the past weeks, both in Europe and the United States, we have seen increasing amount of BA4 and BA5 variants. They seem to be more transmissible, fitter viruses. We must take them into account as we move forward. Again, as I noted, it's important that people remember that for the current vaccine, the prototype vaccine, the vaccine that has been authorized today, it's good to get that started, because that will help prevent against the most serious outcomes, even from the Omicron variants. That said, we do believe that it will be very important to be as closely matched to whatever is circulating as we move into the coming months. And so, yes, we will be looking at all of the tools in our toolbox to try to move forward to help that matching, because the more well matched the vaccine is for what is circulating, the better protection and perhaps even the more durable protection we will see. So that will certainly be of discussion. And we have already, I'm willing to say, we've already started to have those discussions with manufacturers to have them see what they can do to be ready if we were to need to go down the route of BA4, BA5 variant vaccines.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Rob Stein at NPR.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Thank you for taking my question. I had a couple questions. One was, I just noticed in your announcement that you cited the specific effectiveness data from Moderna's vaccine, but not from the Pfizer Biontech vaccine. I was just curious why that was. And then second question is, there was a lot of talk at the advisory committee meeting about the Moderna shot requiring Moderna vaccine requiring a third shot at some point. Do you foresee that being the same formulation or an updated formulation, maybe a bivalent version of the vaccine?
Of course, all the Pfizer data is publicly available, but yeah, Peter, do you want to talk about the press release? And
Happy to do so. So what we were dealing with were data sets of different maturity, and the Moderna data on effectiveness was more mature than the Pfizer 3-dose data. We were able to feel confident in the numbers that were given, so they were included. That's not to say that we we have any concerns, because the primary objective here that we use for showing that these vaccines are going to be effective in children is the immunobridging, that immune response. And for both of these vaccines, they fully met those immune bridging criteria. So we are comfortable with the effectiveness and the safety of both of these vaccines. I think we will have to wait a little bit longer for Pfizer to have more mature effectiveness data to have the kind of confidence that we'd like to put out numbers in that zone. Although we don't have any concerns that there is going to be any significant concern with effectiveness here. And regarding the third dose for Moderna, I think, for right now, it's a little too early to call what that might be in terms of its composition. And it will depend on when we receive additional data about that and the timing of the any strain change. So a little early to be able to call that at this point.
Great, thank you.
We have time for one last question. Our last question comes from Sarah Carlin Smith at Pink Sheet.
Oh, you're on mute.
Sarah, you're muted.
Sorry, I was so focused on having to do the camera. I have a couple of questions. One is in terms of the timing for children and these new variants. Obviously, there has been frustration that these youngest kids haven't had vaccines as soon. Would we expect there would need to be the same delay to get data in youngest kids for the new variants as the vaccines get updated, or would there be a faster process as the vaccines are updated moving forward? And then again, going back to this potential, this perception of timing here, with Moderna's vaccine, could you have broken out the youngest subgroup and approved that for the youngest subgroup faster, since there wasn't an option, rather than having it take so long to review the whole under 18 cohort at once?
Peter, the nuances of review, I know, first of all, I do want to recognize the amount of work that the employees at CBER put in. For those of you who have not tried to ingest a big data set, understand it and deal with it, I'd urge you to see if you can get insight into that. It's a lot of work, and there were many nights and weekends spent trying to get this right. But there were decisions that had to be made about how to look at the data. So, Peter, I'll turn that over to you.
Yeah, so let me start with that since you've just mentioned it. So we did a thorough and rigorous evaluation of the data, and yes, could you have tried to break things out differently? I guess we could have tried a variety of different things, but at the end of the day, what we did made the most sense, because there are issues of approving a vaccine for a very young population and then having a donut hole where you do not have an approval. That could have created a whole nother set of issues. And at the end of the day, there was not a big difference in the timing here. I think the most important thing as we move forward to know is that as we move into the younger age ranges with boosters, we won't have to do the same kind of waiting because we now have the immunobridging we need. We understand what the doses are correct for these populations. And so much is the same way as we may change the strains in older individuals, we'll be able to train strains in younger individuals, and we won't have, I do not anticipate any substantial delays here if we decide that younger children need an updated strain. And that's, I say if, because we will have to see where the data take us here. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us here today and participating in this press conference around the FDA's authorizations of the Moderna COVID-19 and Pfizer Bioentec COVID-19 vaccines. We invite you to visit our website at fda.gov for more information about the authorization. This concludes today's FDA press conference. A replay will be available on the FDA's YouTube page. If you have follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to contact the FDA press office at fdaoma@fda.hhs.gov. Thank you and have a great day.